Last time, in the fading rain of Vršovice Sadi, two strangers stopped pretending they were just walking their dogs. Evan, new to Prague, still unpacking both boxes and pieces of himself, found comfort in routine. Daniel, steady, familiar with every corner of the city, found a rhythm he didn't realize he'd been missing. A yellow bowl was returned. An umbrella was shared. And somewhere between those small gestures, something shifted, quiet, but undeniable. Now, the week has carried them to Saturday, to a cafe that smells like roasted beans and wet fur, where two dogs curl under one table, and two men begin to see what's been quietly growing between them. This is Autumn Tales. Chapter 3. Brunch and Spark. In this episode, a missing dog, a silverin, and a truth that feels too gentle to be called a confession. The apartment above the shop still smelled faintly of machine oil and coffee. It was always the same mix, the scent of work and morning. Downstairs, the bell over the repair shop door chimed each time the wind slipped through the street, a reminder that the world was already awake. Daniel moved through routine without thought. Coffee, keys, phone, leash. His mornings had been the same for years. A list followed more from muscle than memory. But lately, there was a pause between each motion. A quiet second where his hands stopped, as if expecting something to interrupt. Sonny waited by the door, tail sweeping the floor, ball in his mouth. Daniel smiled, setting the coffee down to scratch behind his ears. "Yeah, I know," he murmured. "We're going." He glanced at the clock, then at the reflection in the small kitchen window. Stubble he hadn't shaved yet, the silver ring on his hand, catching the light. He turned it once with his thumb, a habit more than a thought, and left it where it was. Outside, Vršovice was damp and half awake. Shop shutters still closed, tram cables humming overhead. The leash slackened easily. Sonny always knew the route, down through the narrow street, past the flower stand, toward the park that stretched uphill into light. The air smelled of rain and soil. His footsteps fell into rhythm with Sonny's, and for a few minutes that was enough. The city moved around them, voices in check, a bicycle bell, the rattle of a passing tram, and Daniel felt that odd, pleasant weight in his chest again, the kind that doesn't hurt but reminds you you're feeling something. By the time they reached the path near the vineyard, the clouds had broken into soft gray layers. He checked his phone once, a message he hadn't answered, from Lucy, then slipped it back into his pocket. Not today, he whistled low. Sonny bounded ahead, gold against the dull leaves. Daniel followed, slower, smiling without meaning to. There was someone he expected to see today, someone whose laugh had started to sound familiar in his head, and that thought, simple, quiet, was enough to make the morning feel new. The bell above the cafe door gave a soft chime when Evan stepped inside. Café Mostu was smaller than he'd imagined, narrow tables tucked against brick walls, candles in glass jars flickering even in daylight. A window faced the street, where the last of the rain still slid down the glass, cutting the city into slow-moving reflections. He stood there for a moment, uncertain whether to wait or sit. Cucumber made the decision for him, trotting straight toward an empty corner table and curling neatly beneath it, as if he already belonged. Evan smiled, lowering the leash. "So that's your spot." The little spaniel's tail brushed against the leg of his boot, slow and content. The sound of low conversation filled the room. Czech, English, a blend of both, and the soft hiss of milk steaming behind the counter. He slipped off his coat, smoothing the collar, then sat. The seat was warm from whoever had been there before. His reflection met his eyes faintly in the window, the soft kind of tired that travel never quite erases, hair slightly unruly from the wind. He reached for the menu, tracing the Czech words with his finger, whispering them under his breath to practice. The waiter smiled as he passed, and Evan returned it automatically. Across from him, Cucumber had already stretched one paw forward, chin resting on it, eyes half closed. Comfortable. Completely at home. Evan leaned back and looked around the cafe, the shelves lined with mismatched books, the stack of newspapers by the window, the coat rack near the door. It reminded him of the places he used to picture when imagining a new start. Warm, ordinary, alive. The thought came quietly, like it didn't want to startle him. Maybe I could get used to this. He reached down, brushing his hand over Cucumber's ear. "Good choice," he whispered. The bell chimed again. Evan looked up. Daniel stepped in from the street, dark jacket damp at the shoulders, hand running through rain-touched hair, that calm, unhurried presence that always seemed to fill the air around him before he said anything. Sunny patted in after him, big paws already making for Cucumber's corner. Evan felt his chest lift, without meaning to. A small, quiet recognition, like remembering the next line of a song you hadn't realized was still playing. Even Cucumber lifted his head. Daniel gave a small nod, a faint curve at the mouth that wasn't quite a smile, but felt like one, anyway. Evan half rose from his seat, unsure whether to wave or greet. He didn't have to. Daniel had already begun crossing the room. Sunny followed his lay, big paws and soft confidence. The leash trailed loose, a rhythm of trust learned long ago. He reached Cucumber's corner, tail thumping once, twice, before settling beside the smaller dog like they'd planned it. The air between them felt familiar, but careful, as if they were both aware of something new in the space and didn't want to startle it. Evan lifted the menu he'd already been reading, though his eyes weren't on the words. Daniel noticed. Do you need help translating? Evan smiled, lowering it slightly, maybe just deciding. It all looks good. Daniel leaned forward, pointing. If you want something simple, eggs with dill, black bread, and coffee. Or the pancakes. They're not really pancakes, though I'll take your word for it. He tried to sound easy, but his voice came out quieter than he meant. Daniel's hand brushed the edge of the table as he called to the waiter. The faint clink of a silver ring against the wooden surface caught Evan's attention. He looked down before he could stop himself, a quick flicker of curiosity that felt too personal the moment it happened. The ring wasn't shining. It was dulled, familiar, like it had been worn longer than it should have been. Evan forced himself to look away. Coffee's fine. Black. Good choice, Daniel said. He smiled, but Evan's return was faint, polite, distant, trying not to give anything away. When the waiter left, a quiet filled the space. Not uncomfortable, but aware. Daniel folded his hands loosely, the silver catching light again. Outside, the mist thickened, softening the edges of passing cars. Inside, the two dogs pressed closer, like warmths. Evan watched the condensation form on his cup, small beads of warmth gathering and sliding down the porcelain. He told himself he wasn't thinking about the ring, but his chest felt heavier than it had a moment ago. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was a story he wasn't meant to ask for yet. Daniel broke the silence first. So, did you survive the first full week? Evan exhaled, grateful for the distraction. Barely. I already lost track of how many times I said repeat after me. Daniel laughed softly. They'll learn faster than you think. Evan smiled again, the weight in his chest easing. Not gone, but quieter. The plates arrived with a soft clatter, eggs still steaming, bread thick and dark, a faint scent of butter and dill drifting upward. Outside, the drizzle softened into a pale haze. Light pressed through the window like watercolor. Then Daniel's recommendation arrived. Not quite pancakes, but thin folded circles, with caramelized edges, layered with a drizzle of poppy seed honey and a scoop of soft white cheese melting at the center. Evan blinked, smiling faintly. Daniel cut a small piece with his fork and nodded toward it. Try it. And for a moment, he didn't speak. His eyes widened slightly, not from surprise, but from that quiet disbelief that something so simple could taste that good. Daniel's laugh was low, quick. Told you. Evan smiled without answering, a small shake of his head, as if conceding defeat. The warmth of it stayed in his expression even as he looked back down at his plate, cutting slower, thoughtful. For a while, they ate in companionable quiet. Cucumber and Sunny shifted beneath the table, tails brushing, the occasional sigh rising between them. And Daniel noticed something. A small smear of sauce near the corner of Evan's mouth, catching the light when he smiled. Daniel hesitated. His hand lifted halfway, stopped, then dropped to the table. He tried again, this time using words. Evan reached for his napkin but missed the spot entirely. Steal? Daniel's voice lowered, uncertain but gentle. He leaned forward before he could second-guess himself, then reached for a napkin instead. Hold still, he said quietly. Evan stopped mid-motion. The napkin brushed gently across his skin, a soft, careful motion that lingered a fraction too long before Daniel pulled back. The warmth of it startled them both. The waiter passed by just then, catching the moment with a knowing half-smile that vanished as quickly as it came. Daniel leaned back, eyes lowering to his coffee. Sorry, he said quietly. Old habit. I'm used to looking out for details. It's fine, Evan answered, still half smiling. He didn't look away this time. The silence that followed wasn't heavy, just full, like the air after rain. Outside, someone walked past with an umbrella the color of honey. Inside, the dogs had drifted into sleep, their paws tangled, their breathing perfectly aligned. It wasn't a spark. Not yet. Just a brief crossing of lines. A touch meant for kindness that carried something neither of them named. The kind of moment that stays, even after the coffee cools. When the plates were nearly empty, the conversation drifted easily to the dogs. It was the kind of talk that didn't need much thinking, just affection shared in sentences that smiled. Daniel leaned back, watching Sonny under the table. He's a little too polite sometimes. Waits at doors. Never takes food unless I nod first. I think he picked up all my bad habits. Evan laughed. That sounds ideal. Cucumber's the opposite. He's brave until something moves faster than him. Then it's chaos. Daniel's eyes softened. Maybe that's why they get along. Evan nodded, following the curve of his spoon in the cup. He makes the apartment feel like it's not just a place I'm staying in. That made Daniel glance up quietly, like he didn't mean to look so directly. That's important, he said. To have someone that waits for you. The waiter returned with the bill, setting it down between them. Daniel reached first. Quick, but unhurried. My treat. You can owe me a walk. Evan tilted his head. A walk? Trade places. You take Sonny, I'll take Cucumber. He said it casually, but the idea hung in the air like an invitation to something lighter. Evan hesitated, smiling. All right, but if Sonny decides to change careers mid-walk, I'm blaming you. They left the cafe together. The rain had stopped, leaving the pavement slick and shining like glass. Sonny walked perfectly at Evan's side, matching his pace. Cucumber, meanwhile, zigzagged down the street, stopping every few meters to sniff or make his mark, pulling Daniel this way and that with cheerful insistence. Daniel didn't mind. Each tug made him laugh quietly, shoulders shaking as he tried to keep up. Evan glanced over once, grinning despite himself. He's got a system, he said. Daniel knows it. A chaotic one. But it works. When they reached the park gates, the clouds had thinned, letting the first stretch of late afternoon light fall across the grass. The air smelled clean again. Pine, and the faint sweetness of something blooming too early for the season. Let them loose? Evan asked. Daniel knows it. Sonny won't go far. They unlatched the leashes almost at the same time. For a heartbeat, both dogs stayed near, sniffing, circling, testing the space. Then a sudden blur of white fluttered above the path of pigeons scattering from the fountain. Cucumber barked once, sharp and excited. Then Cucumber bolted forward. Sonny hesitated, looked back at Daniel. Then at the flying shapes. Sonny ran off. Evan's leash caught mid-release. He stumbled forward as it pulled tight, boots slipping on the damp path, falling hard against the grass. Soon he stopped a few paces ahead, ears high, unsure. Cucumber barked again from farther away, tail high and certain. Forget about him. Come on. And Sonny did. A flash of gold, a sound of paws fading into distance. Daniel reached Evan in a few quick strides, kneeling beside him. Evan laughed once, more out of breath than humor. There was dirt streaked across his hand, a small cut blooming near the base of his palm. Daniel uncapped his water bottle, pouring a little over it without asking first. The water ran cool over skin and earth. Evan flinched, but didn't pull away. Daniel's hand steadied his, thumb pressing gently to keep it still. Hold on, he murmured. The touch lingered, not held, but resting, warm against the chill air. When Evan finally looked up, Daniel was already watching him. Neither spoke. The distance between them felt measured by breath alone. Then a bark cut through the quiet. Sonny, mud on his paws, tail wagging, tongue out, came bounding back full of apology. Daniel smiled, standing. See, he never goes far. Evan pushed himself up, brushing dirt from his coat. Daniel scanned the park, no sign of Cucumber, just the echo of his bark somewhere down the slope. He crouched beside Sonny, resting a hand on his collar. Sonny, show me where Cucumber is. Sonny barked once, then shot forward. Daniel followed, quick and sure. Evan hesitated only long enough to take a breath, then ran after them, his step softer, heart louder than he wanted to admit. It wasn't the distance that scared him. It was the sudden quiet where something familiar had been a moment before. They followed the sound of barking through the lower path, past the vineyard wall, and into the softer, wetter ground where the rain had gathered. Evan's breath came in uneven bursts. Daniel's steps stayed steady beside him, his hand brushing branches out of the way. Sonny darted ahead, circling back once, as if to say this way, before bounding through a patch of reeds near the pond. And there, half hidden in the mud, tail wagging furiously, was Cucumber. His chest was streaked brown, his fur matted into wild curls, but his eyes were bright and unapologetic. He gave one bark, triumphant. Then another, then, for good measure, jumped straight into Daniel's legs. The splash was immediate. Mud climbed the hem of Daniel's jeans, across his coat, splattering up his sleeve. All dirt heavy, he froze mid-step, one hand outstretched, the other holding the leash. Evan stopped a few feet away, breathless from running. The dog only wagged harder, sending another spray of mud over Daniel's shoes. Daniel looked down at himself, then at Evan, and laughed. That low, real kind of laugh that doesn't sound often. Evan smiled, shaking his head. You look like the one who got rescued. Feels like it, Daniel admitted. He wiped his sleeve with a handful of grass, which only made it worse. For a moment, the world settled again, rain beginning to lift the soft hum of the city beyond the trees. Daniel stood there, soaked to the knees, smiling despite himself. Evan hesitated before speaking. My place is close, he said, almost too casually. If you want to wash off before heading home. Daniel glanced up, a faint surprise in his eyes that quickly softened into gratitude. You sure? Iba nodded. I think you've earned a clean towel. Their eyes met briefly, not charged, not hesitant, just steady. Cucumber barked once, as if to approve. Sonny wagged his tail in agreement. They turned toward the street together, leashes crossed, mud trailing behind them in faint uneven footprints. The rain had stopped for real this time. The sky above them opened pale and clear, and the city seemed to exhale, as if it had been holding its breath, waiting for this quiet, ordinary moment. On the small balcony of a Vršovice apartment, Sonny and Cucumber waited, looped over the railing, tails thumping against metal in uneven rhythm. They'd been left outside for now, still damp and streaked with mud, until their turn came for a proper wash. Cucumber, proud of his adventure, sat close to Sonny, who looked cleaner, but not by much. Neither seemed to mind. They didn't know why they were waiting, only that the rain had stopped, and that being side by side felt right enough. Below them, the street carried the soft hum of the evening, a tram bell, a door closing, the smell of wet stone rising with the wind. Inside, water ran in the bathroom. Daniel's jacket hung by the sink, droplets gathering at the edge before falling to the tile. Steam curled up the mirror, blurring his reflection until it was just movement, the sound of a man quietly washing off the day. He opened the small cabinet above the sink, half out of habit. Inside, a scatter of everyday things. A comb, a worn toothbrush, a box of plasters near the back. He turned one over in his hand, remembering the cut on Evan's palm, small, but enough to linger in his mind. He set the bandage by the edge of the sink, ready to mention it later. Evan moved through the apartment in low light, searching drawers for an old towel and a pair of sweatpants that might fit. The floor creaked under his bare feet, small sounds that somehow felt louder tonight. He passed the window on his way to the closet, and paused. Outside, the dogs waited on the balcony, two small silhouettes pressed close, unaware of why they'd been left there. Cucumber's head rested against Sonny's shoulder, both content in the way animals are when the world finally feels still. Evan smiled to himself. He found a towel at last, frayed at the edges, soft from years of use, and folded it over his arm. On the kitchen counter, the kettle began to hum, steam curling against the light. For a moment, he just stood there, the room heavy with the scent of rain and soap, a trace of laughter still hanging in the air. He thought of Daniel's hand steadying his earlier, the quiet patience in it. Something about it lingered. Not the touch itself, but the feeling that someone had noticed. For the first time, the apartment didn't feel quiet. It felt full. 2 dogs, 2 men, 1 home, borrowed for a moment, warmed by accident, and somewhere between laughter and running water, the beginning of something they both pretended not to name. This was Autumn Tales, Chapter 3. Brunch and Spark. Next time, Steam fills the bathroom. Towels pile by the door, and laughter softens into something steadier. A simple act of care turns into belonging, and the silver ring waiting on Daniel's hand begins to ask its quiet question. And the night of calm becomes the start of something neither expected. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow and subscribe for the next chapter, where an evening turns into honesty, and a quiet question finally finds its answer. And while you wait, check out the other stories on our channel, like Men Being Too Intimate, We Are SNWB, and many more from our world of gay audiobooks.